Hi everyone, it's Alyssa and this is Always Cinema Chic, the place that encourages you to go out, get dressed up, and watch a movie. So today I am going to review Justice League, which stars Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Ezra Miller, Jason Momoa, Ray Fisher, and Henry Cavill, and it's once again directed by Zack Synder. Now, I went into this movie with pretty low expectations. I saw that the Rotten Tomatoes composite score was a 37. It's now 40, but I really didn't think that this movie was going to be good. I didn't even think the trailer looked particularly good anyway, but I can honestly say that this was not a bad movie. It was better than I expected it to be, and that's not to say that it was great. It definitely wasn't great, but it's a step in the right direction for the DC universe, and I think what really helped it was the chemistry between all of the characters, and there was a little bit more levity to this film than the previous one. So the movie starts off right where the last one left off. So Superman is dead, the world is in disarray, they feel like there are no more heroes, and of course it's the perfect time for a villain to just come from the sky. So we have this character Steppenwolf, who is looking for these three boxes that are on Earth. Once these three boxes are put together, it basically means the end of the world. So a really original storyline. Not at all. But there are the three groups of people who are protecting each box. So you have the Amazonians, the Atlanteans, and the humans. Now they used to work together and they had some kind of unity, and that was a great defense against Steppenwolf, but that kind of unity is no longer there and everyone's sort of on their own. So Bruce Wayne believes that the only way to save the world now that Superman is gone is to put together a team that will defeat Steppenwolf. So now some members like Wonder Woman are easier to recruit, while others like Aquaman do not necessarily want to be part of the team. Now, one of the biggest problems with the movie is the fact that we don't have any origin, or at least not many origin stories for the characters. So, you walk in and you know who Diana is, and she turned out to be one of my favorite characters because I actually knew who she was. But in terms of understanding like Cyborg or Aquaman or the Flash, I felt like there was no real background to these characters, and at only an hour and 50 minutes, this movie really wasn't long enough, which is not usually a comment that I say for superhero movies, but I felt like instead there should have been these standalone movies for the Flash and Aquaman before you come together and you make them form this mashup of the Justice League, because I just didn't know a lot about them. Once again, I'm not a huge comic book fan. I don't read comic books, but I will watch these movies, and I expect to have some kind of background to the characters in order for me to care about them. Now, I will say that the casting was really good, that I thought that Jason Momoa as Aquaman, he was really funny, and Ezra Miller especially, I thought, stood out as being particularly funny in the film. I know that there were a lot of people who were doubting Ezra Miller because they really wanted the actor from the TV show The Flash to play that character. Now, I've never seen that TV show, so I can only judge, his performance, and I thought he was really funny, but that's kind of all the character had. He just had a bunch of comedic moments without much background at all. So I felt like the writers realized how much people liked Evan Peters as Quicksilver in X-Men, so they just gave the Flash many of the same comedic situations and moments as Quicksilver. Now, the Flash is such a prominent character in this movie, and he's not just a side character like Quicksilver is, so what he needed was more character development. I mean, he's very funny in the movie, but all they gave him were a bunch of one-liners, and I felt like we needed more. We get a little bit of a side story with him and his father, but it's barely anything. You get one line about how he was struck by lightning, and that's why he's the Flash, but I didn't know anything else about his character, his background. I mean, his dad is in prison, and he seems to be like totally lighthearted all of the time, so a little bit more depth to that character certainly would have helped the film in general. And I was also a little bit disappointed with the writing for Aquaman as well. Like, he's funny, he's a curmudgeon, but we never know what he's actually thinking or his background or really who he is exactly. I would say that there's one really funny moment where we do get insight into his character and what he's thinking, but I won't spoil it for you. But I have to say I was the most disappointed with the Cyborg character. Ray Fisher was given nothing here to work with in terms of the writing. I found the character really bland. He, changes a little bit at the end, but in general, I just found him to be a really boring character, and there was nothing the actor could have done to change that. It was completely the writing. I thought that Ben Affleck definitely improved in this film as Batman because he gets a few more lighthearted moments, but he still understands that dark tone that Batman should have. So I didn't hate him in this movie. He was perfectly fine, I thought, as Batman, and I felt like Zack Synder is starting to get his feet grounded with what the tone should be, but I would say he's not quite there yet. So, I'm really on the fence with the integration of humor in these movies. There's part of me that thinks they're only doing it because the humor works well in the Marvel movies, but the DC movies do not have to be funny. I think of Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, and to me, you really can't create better comic book movies than what those were. Those will always be the standard for me. But Zack Synder even proved that he could do it when he did The Watchmen. That was such a wonderful film. It was very slow paced. You got to really know the characters. It's very dark, very serious. There are some pops of humor, but it has a very, dark, atmospheric kind of feeling to the whole movie. So I don't necessarily think that these movies need to have a ton of humor, but I was trying to think what's the difference between the Dark Knight trilogy and Watchmen with the Batman versus Superman and Man of Steel, and to me it's realism. I think that the Dark Knight trilogy and the Watchmen, they have realism. They create real characters, even though they're superheroes. There's something relatable in terms of the dark parts of their personality. We really get to know them on a much deeper level, and I never have felt that in Man of Steel or Batman versus Superman. So, they're using the humor as a way to get the audience to connect to the characters, and that's fine. Humor definitely works if you want, a more of a superficial connection to the characters. But at the end of the day, I feel like DC can really set themselves apart from the Marvel Universe if they went in a darker direction, but really gave a lot more depth to the characters and had them, feel emotions that humans feel. And I think that would set them apart and move them in a different direction, and it could be just a brilliant franchise. But the humor does work in the movie, so that's why I say I'm on the fence. And then circling back around to Superman, I don't think this is a spoiler at all by saying Henry Cavill is back as Superman in the movie. He's in, you see the S in the trailer, you see it in the marketing, you see his name on IMDb. I won't say how he comes back, but even with that character, I did feel a greater sense of connection to him. He has a little bit more of a wide range of emotions, and he has some truly funny moments as well, and so that's why I'm on the fence with the humor. I found the humor helped to make me connect to the characters better, but that could also be lazy writing because you're not creating very complex characters. I don't know. But one thing for sure that really didn't work was the editing, which I found to be very uneven. The beginning was, just kind of quickly introducing you to all of the characters, but you never really get to know who they are. And this movie without credits is about 1 hour and 45 minutes, and that's just way too short to introduce you to all of these characters. If you wanted to add, say, like 20-25 minutes, I think you could have given enough backstory to Aquaman and the Flash and Cyborg, but they just didn't do that, and I understand that's because of Warner Brothers. They told Zack Synder that the movie had to be under 2 hours long. This is certainly under 2 hours long, but I think that extra 20-25 minutes would have really helped. So, if the movie were 2 hours and 10 minutes, it would have been more fully fleshed out, but it wouldn't be too long. I feel like when these comic book movies, when they hit that 2.5 hour mark, even like 2 hours, 20 minutes, it's just way too long. But, slightly above 2 hours, that I think actually would have been a benefit to this movie. So I will say that perhaps the worst part of the movie is the villain Steppenwolf. He is just so boring, and he just simply comes from the sky wreaking havoc. I have a hard time connecting to a CGI character, and that's all he was. He really is just a CGI villain without much of a purpose at all. It feels like his only purpose is to get all of the members of the Justice League together. It's really just an excuse to get these characters on the same team. He's got nothing else going on besides that. And in my opinion, a villain really needs to be simultaneously loved and hated, especially in a comic book. And I want to get more insight into who they are and where they're coming from, and why they are this villain that we're seeing in front of us. And you don't get any of that here. I would recommend, though, that you stay till the very bitter end of the movie, because we get introduced to who the next two villains are going to be, and I can promise you they will be infinitely better than Steppenwolf. So I'm actually excited for where this movie can go, or this franchise can go in the future. But I really have been so disappointed with Zack Synder lately. He started off just so strong. I love Dawn of the Dead, 300, Watchmen. These were such great movies, and I had such high hopes thinking this guy is going to be one of the next directors that I'm obsessed with. And then he did Sucker Punch, which is one of my most hated movies of all time. I hate that movie, and I've seen it multiple times thinking I'm missing something. I just hate that movie. And then Man of Steel is okay. Batman versus Superman I thought was a low for him. It was just way too dark. But here you can see he still doesn't totally get the vision of what he wants the DC universe to be, but he's starting to change some aspects of it. So you can see this warmer color palette, especially with the addition of Themyscira in this movie. So you can start to see that there are changes. The colors, they're still dark and saturated, but there's a little bit more life than the previous endeavors. I will say, though, that Zack Synder definitely shoots the characters in a much more objectified way than other directors. There are a lot of scenes where the guys just take their shirts off for no reason, and Diana is wearing some pretty low-cut shirts that we don't see as her style at all in the previous movie, and it just felt kind of cheesy to me. It felt like these obligatory, look how much I've worked out, gotta take my shirt off kind of, you know, scenes that are in the movie. And yeah, I know they do that in the Marvel movies, but I feel like those movies are just a little more campy in general, so it works, and it doesn't work so well within the tone that DC has created. So I don't know why, but that just really annoyed me. And now for the grades. In terms of film and artistry, which is how beautifully it's shot, the story, the acting, I would give Justice League a C+. It's better than I expected. They're definitely going in the right direction, but there are still many flaws. The story was just uninventive. The villain is especially weak, and the editing is not very fluid, and we don't get any background to the characters, but the chemistry between the actors does work, and it does give me hope for the future, especially knowing who the next set of villains are going to be. And in terms of watchability, which is how much I enjoyed the movie, I would give I would give Justice League, clearly I want to watch The Watchmen right now instead, I would give it a B-. So I did enjoy myself in this movie, but I can't forget about how bored I was in the beginning of the film, and I felt like if they did expand the characters and give more of a background to those characters, that entertainment value would have gone up quite a bit for me. So I felt like, you know, it's almost there, it's getting there. I did enjoy myself, it wasn't terrible, but I just want a little bit more. I will also say that I do usually get some kind of audience reaction because I go to a local sort of towny movie theater, and it's really not uncommon that you would just start talking to the person next to you about whether you like the movie or not. So I ended up talking to a few people, and they really did share many of the same opinions that I had. They thought it was better than some of the previous DC movies. They still like Wonder Woman better, but that it doesn't necessarily compare to Marvel. That Marvel is still reigns supreme. But one guy that I spoke to, he was really excited about one of the new villains that will be coming in the next movie. He actually screamed in the movie theater, so I went up to talk to him about it, and he gave me this whole background about the character, and I can see why he's so excited. So once again, I do have this hope for the future, and I'm gonna try to stick with it. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you saw Justice League, please leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. And even if you haven't, you know, what do you think about the whole DC universe? Does it work for you? What can they do to improve it? If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And remember, it is always in fashion to go out, get dressed up, and make it a cinema chic night. Bye, everyone.